And welcome back, everybody, and welcome to Sunday afternoon for Unit 5. This is South Seminole Academy. I'm still Mark McCauley, your facilitator and timer from yesterday. I've just been hanging out in here all night, waiting for you to come back. Looking forward to what you have to say, and if you're still good with it, we'll do the green background for your 1 minute timing, your 1 minute notification, and then the yellow background when you're down to 4 minutes and 8 minutes time is up. And with that, I'm going to mute myself and turn you over to the judges.
I have been designated as that person who is going to announce to Mark that he is a free man. He doesn't have to stay there forever. He can go at some point. Good afternoon. It's good to see you all again. My name's Lindsay Draper. Yesterday, I told you about my old job. I am currently Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at the Institute for Wellbeing in Law. My co-judges are
Candida Steele, and I'm still retired from the U.S. Civilian Board of Contract Appeals and from the state of Maryland, but actually I've just moved to Maine, so I'm not. Welcome, glad to see you again.
Welcome back this afternoon. So glad to see you and glad to be here. I'm Rebecca Tinder, a retired attorney from Charleston, West Virginia, and the West Virginia We the People coordinator.
And you are?
I'm Lara Kulu from South Seminole Academy. I'm representing Unit 5. Nice to see you all again.
I am Diana Bastardo. I am from South Seminole Academy, and I am representing Unit 5, and this is our teacher, Robert Adamowitz.
Good.
Welcome.
Well, we look forward to hearing your answer to the second question. Political and social movements in American history have been successful because of the right of assembly. President Abraham Lincoln wrote in a letter that the right of peaceable assembly is part of the constitutional substitute for revolution. Do you agree or disagree with President Lincoln? Why? What is the history of freedom of assembly in America? What historical or contemporary evidence is there, if any, that political and social movements have led to significant changes in laws or policies? What limits, if any, should be placed on the right to freedom of assembly? Begin.
President Lincoln was elected during a time of extreme tension that would lead to the Civil War. The way he wanted to lead the country was to slowly guide it in the right direction. The quote by President Lincoln was said to encourage people to peacefully assemble and protest, instead of the alternative, which was secession and war. Lincoln was correct in his statement. People can achieve change through peaceful protest, sometimes more effectively than with force. If countries were forced to have a revolution every time something needed to be changed, there would be no progress, only pain. The first written instance of the freedom of assembly was in the Pennsylvania Declaration of Rights in 1776, which stated the people have a right to assemble together to consult for their common good. Neither the Declaration of Independence in 1776 or the U.S. Constitution in 1788 mentioned the freedom of assembly. However, in 1791, the First Amendment established the freedom of assembly for all Americans and set a worldwide precedent on the freedom of expression. Over 200 years, the limits of the freedom of assembly have broadened to only when there is a clear and present danger involved with the presentation of an idea. The freedom of assembly was recognized as a fundamental human right in the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948 and has since become essential to any change in America or any democratic country. Throughout history, the right to peaceably assemble has led to major change for many groups. One of the most well-known involves Martin Luther King Jr. and the fight for African American equal rights. On August 28, 1963, around 250,000 people marched on the Capitol for jobs and freedom for African Americans, and MLK Jr. gave his historic "I Have a Dream" speech. Their efforts paid off when the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were passed, making it illegal to discriminate against people based on race and eliminating barriers that kept them from voting.
Around 50 years beforehand, on March 3rd, 1913, a day before Woodrow Wilson was inaugurated, thousands of women marched for their right to vote on Pennsylvania Avenue. Their parade included more than 20 floats as well as 9 bands and people on horseback. Some of the marchers faced violence from the crowd, but they continued on and drew national attention through headlines and congressional hearings. Even though the 19th Amendment and women's right to vote wouldn't appear for 7 more years, this protest was a major step towards them that empowered the suffragettes. More recently, protests like the September 9, 2019 climate strikes mobilized the younger generation to fight for the planet. Ultimately, businesses like Ben & Jerry and Lush closed to show their support, and students got the day off of school to protest. Amazon's Jeff Bezos also agreed to take steps towards meeting the Paris Climate Agreement requirements 10 years in advance. Another modern example, demonstrations such as Black Lives Matter have brought attention to racism and police brutality in America. The First Amendment says Congress shall make no law abridging the right of the people to peacefully to assemble. To simplify, the government can't interfere with public protests, but they can limit the First Amendment. Public protests can be limited under some circumstances. There has to be a reason for an assembly to be prohibited. For example, the government could moderate assemblies based on the time, place, and manner, unless they are reasonable and non-violent. Some assemblies could be justified by addressing governmental issues and leaving other safe ways for the message to spread. Other states, like in New York, you would need to get a permit if the assembly being hosted has more than 200 attendees, along with a very detailed application. If the assembly does not violate the clear and present danger, you should still march. This means that as long as no one is in danger because of the assembly, you should still march. Overall, assemblies are a good way to project your beliefs in a way that gains them attention and support. Thank you. We will now take your questions.
Thank you.
So why is it so significant that the word peaceable is included in the description or as the description of the assembly that we have a right to? Why is the word peaceable so important?
Because if an assembly has the potential to cause harm for people, then it should not be allowed. And if it causes harm, it should not be allowed.
Okay.
I
So-
agree with, oh, sorry. Yeah.
Go.
Okay, I agree with Laura because like we saw in the riot in January 6th, I believe, being assembly having to be peaceful is very important so no one gets harmed in the process.
Okay,
What
thanks.
do you think can be done to ensure that it's a peaceful protest? What
People should
responsibility do the people? I'm sorry, go ahead.
People should be told that, hey, we are only here to assemble together and protest quietly, like the riots that were passed off as protests. Those did not achieve change at all. People should be told beforehand, we are not here to be aggressive. We are here to just be assertive.
I think that there should be laws, and I agree with Laura. I think that there should be laws that say that a protest or assembly should be peaceful. And if it's meant to be taken like by force and like very non-peacefully, it shouldn't be enforced.
Okay.
In DeYoung versus Oregon, the Supreme Court held that freedom of assembly was as important as freedom of speech. Do you agree or disagree, and why?
I agree, because one person speaking out can only do so much. If a group of people come together and state their views, then it makes it much easier to see that, hey, a lot of people believe in this. Maybe we should change the law, or maybe we should bring light to this issue.
Can't we do that by just each one saying their piece? Why do we have to get together to do it?
There's strength in numbers.
So I'm sorry, Donna, go ahead.
I agree with Laura. I think that a group of people speaking out against a governmental issue is better than just one person.
You think people
So,
pay more attention? Go ahead, Lindsay.
no, finish up.
So you think people pay more attention if they're a bunch of people rather than one person, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and I realize I'm taking you back to when I was your age, but one of the things that I remember a lot would be protests during the Vietnam War. And the question that I have of you is, given that there is likely to be a lot of disagreement because some fellow citizens have children over fighting in the war, so they're not going to be all that happy with me. Should there be allowed protests that are clearly going to stir strong feelings? Should we allow that?
Like we said yesterday, speech is one of the most important things. And yes, speech can cause polarization. However, allowing people to get their thoughts out will either achieve change or allow them to get their thoughts out without having to attack anyone.
So you think it prevents violence to allow people to protest?
Yes.
And the fact that you are likely to stir up some folks saying, how dare you, I lost my child in the war, that's not something that the protesters need to take into account?
Yes, the protesters should take that into account. And again, like I said yesterday, people getting their thoughts out allows people to potentially learn more. It's like, wait, the people over there aren't just numbers. They are real people with real families. People cared about them. Maybe we should think about this from their point of view as well.
Okay, thank you.
So I liked your comment about being assertive and not aggressive. How would you describe the difference? What would you think would be okay under assertive and not okay under aggressive?
I think aggressive is meant to, they're both assertive and aggressive are both meant to get their voice and be heard. But I think aggressive isn't the right way, and I think that aggressive is more meant, it's not the right way. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Aggression opens the door to potential violence, whereas assertion is you holding your ground and being able to respond to people who do not agree with you.
Thank you.
We've talked a lot about rights, or rights that are outlined in the First Amendment. What about responsibilities? Do the people participating in these assemblies have any responsibilities? And if so, what are they?
These people who go to these assemblies have the responsibility of keeping the protests or assemblies peaceful, and not, because there's always going to be at least a few people who take it too far.
How do we do that?
We educate them, we tell them, and like the aggressive people are, the loud minority can cause a lot of damage to aggressive minority can cause a lot of damage to different protests. If the protest itself is good, but the people are going about it in the wrong way, it will not be considered in the way we want it to. And so we have to tell those people, or make sure we let people know, these people are not the majority. We are not all like this.
Any issue that you feel strongly about that you would be prepared to protest regarding?
Me
You waited
personally-
long enough. He gave you
Saved by the bell.
Okay. So, and to be real honest with you, Laura, and I want to be sure you understand, I saw we were running out of time, so I threw you a quick one there, and you kind of went, "Oh yeah, I'm watching the time too." So that was funny. So you really, I very much enjoyed the fact that you didn't just start with the amendment and move forward, that you said, there was some stuff that preceded this, the Pennsylvania Declaration of Rights, and then we eventually worked our way. I also like the fact that you incorporated, though just briefly, the Declaration of Rights, that, it included some other stuff, but that you tried to point out that the concept of what are rights is a continuing, evolving activity. Your reference to climate and recent activity made me happy, because we don't need to just think of this conversation as being a 20th century one, that there have been some things that are continuing to go on, and that the Black Lives Matter marches are not just people unhappy. There are people who are trying to bring attention to relationship with law enforcement. So although you did not specify, or if you did, I missed it, the name of the case, you did talk about time, place, and manner. You talked about the content of the court cases. So good job. And like I told you yesterday, two of you pulled this off together without a whole bunch of support. And I will not stop talking about you for a long time. That's excellent. Congratulations.
I agree. It was a lovely job, and I hope you had as much fun as we did listening to you. I think you did a great job bringing up the clear and present danger, and the number of people who marched on Washington with Martin Luther King, the Women's March in 1913, the environmental protest, getting permits from New York. That was an interesting little point. And I very much appreciated your distinction between assertive and aggressive, because that is quite a difference. We need to be assertive and not get to the point of being aggressive, and not knowing that line causes a lot of people a lot of problems. So I appreciate that you recognize it. And it's been a pleasure listening to you. I know I said yesterday you're going to be representing us down the road, I know, and I'll be just thrilled. I hope you've had as much fun doing this as we have listening to you. It was a really lovely job. Thank you.
It was wonderful to see you both again, and just amazing that a team of two can carry on this conversation for 8 minutes into the day. That's just phenomenal. I echo all the comments of the other judges. Appreciate that that you believe that revolution, you can't have progress, only pain with that mode. Although I think if we look at history, we might have seen some progress even with the pain, but I understand where you're coming from. And I too appreciated some of the unique references. We haven't heard Jeff Bezos' name mentioned today. So that was a new one too.
Sure.
And I think with responsibilities, educating our fellow citizens is always a good thing. And thanks to your teacher for sharing the education experience with you all. Great job.
Before we go, I'm glad that, Rebecca, that you brought up the comment, because I did not talk about the teacher, and I really should have. That and for all of the work, but where you've got teams of the size that this school's teams are, it says a tremendous amount about the work that you did. And I'm going to say your name wrong, Mr. Adamowitz, I think is how it was. You deserve a tremendous amount of credit. So I apologize for not doing that in my initial comments. Rebecca, thank you for pulling that back in. And again, all of you, good luck.
Thanks, team. We really appreciate your hard work. Mr. Adamowitz, I echo what Lindsay was saying there, and we thank you for your service to your team there and your support. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday and good luck.
Thank you. Have a nice
Thank
day.